Look at Olga drinking her morning coffee. It's chocolate milk. Hello, welcome back to another video. This week I'm kickstarting my summer sewing officially with a very cute vintage inspired playset. If you're new here, hi, I'm Olga and I make sewing content that is usually vintage inspired and sometimes a little bit nerdy. This week I decided to finally tackle a playset. There's tons of vintage patterns, there's tons of ideas floating around the internet, and I decided to finally go for it. The fabric I'm going to be using is this cotton poplin that is just a brown with white polka dots. I think this will be super cute and really retro. For the shorts, I'm going to be using the Mood Fabrics Eucalyptus shorts pattern. It's free, you can download it, now if you want to, and I've made it on the channel a few times and I really like it. I like the fit, they're easy to make, so I'm gonna go with those. As for the top, I'm gonna use the bodice from this jumper dress and just turn it into a crop top with a button placket down the back to make it extra cute and vintage. That's it, that's the plan. My fastest intro ever. Let's go and do it. Alrighty, so I folded my fabric with right sides together and started pinning. I was a little nervous about whether I'd fit everything on this bit of fabric because I only had 1.25 meters or something like that. So I started pinning the things that were more crucial, like the shorts and the outer layer of the top. I could use another fabric to line it and for the pockets and facings of the shorts, for example. Luckily, this fabric was very wide, so I did get everything on there. I barely have scraps left though. For the shorts, I am lengthening the leg slightly, about 4 centimeters or 1.5 inches. And when I have to cut out 4 of something like this waistband, I pin it, trace it with my fabric marker of choice. This is a heat erasable pen. And then I remove the pins and the pattern so I can pin it again to a new part of the fabric. There's lots of ways to do this, of course, just like everything in sewing, but I like doing it this way because it helps me visualize the amount of fabric I have left, and it means I don't forget to cut anything out. For the modifications on the top, I added 5 centimeters or 2 inches to the center back, which I kind of regret because I think it made it too big. But anyway, I wasn't sure how I was going to tackle the button placket yet, so I thought it would be better to have extra fabric. I also added 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch to the bottom seam allowance to lengthen the top slightly because I didn't want this to be too short. Then I used this section of unused fabric to map out some straps. I made them about 12 centimeters wide and I think around 50 centimeters long. I think in inches this would be 4 3/4 wide by 19 3/4 long. I had a little bit of fabric left for my bodice lining, so I repeated the changes for those sections. For the center front, which is cut on the fold, I didn't have quite enough space to add the 2.5 centimeters I wanted to the hem, so I ended up piecing a bit of fabric to make it the same length, and since it's in the lining, no one's ever gonna see it, apart from you. I started by pinning all of the things I could at this point, which is a lot, as both of these garments are pretty straightforward and I have made them both multiple times before. This included the pockets to the front of the shorts, the crotch seam off the back, one side of both waistbands, the straps along the long edges, and all of the side seams of the bodice layers. And then I stitched everything in place, making sure that I keep the right seam allowance in mind. The seam allowance for the shorts pattern is 1/2 inch, which is like 1.25 centimeters, but the seam allowance of the top is 1.5, which is 5/8 of an inch. So I had to pay attention to that. Then I trimmed all of my seam allowances. I used my regular shears for the seams I was going to zigzag, and then my pinking shears for the bodice pieces, because I saw something somewhere about how pinking shears can be a way to trim and grade/clip your curved seams in one go. So I am testing that out. I'm not sure yet if this is a great tip or not. I need to test it out more, but I thought I'd share it in case you want to try it as well. Next, I pressed all of the seams and zigzagged the back crotch seam too. I flipped the pockets to the inside and top stitched the edge to keep the seam allowances in place, as well as just because I thought it would look cute. Then I have to fold the pockets along the fold line, basically folding them in half. And I like to add a pin at the waistband to keep them in place, and then pin the bottom and side closed for both sides. Next, I pinned these straps in place. I'm crossing them at the back, so the back of each strap is getting pinned to the opposite side of the bodice. Once I had the straps pinned in place, I pinned the lining to the front with right sides together along the top. At this point, I hadn't yet decided on how to tackle the back buttons and how to finish the bodice in general, so I did it this way so I could hang it on my dress form and have a think about it. So then I stitched that in place as well as the pockets I mentioned earlier. I could now trim the pockets and finish them with a zigzag stitch. Then I pinned the fronts together along the crotch seam and stitched that in place. I trimmed and zigzagged the raw edge and then pressed it. Now it's time to pin the front and back of the shorts together. I pinned one out seam. It doesn't matter which, but it's basically the one you're not adding your zipper to, so you decide which one that is for you, and I also went ahead and pinned the inseam. I stitched those seams in place, I trimmed the seam allowances and zigzagged the raw edges before pressing them. Next, I also finished the raw edges of the other side of the shorts separately in preparation for sewing on the zip. I also went ahead and pressed the zipper so that the teeth are not as close to the zipper tape to make it easier to sew. Then I pinned my zipper in place. Now, as I was sewing this, I was thinking, I don't remember there being so much extra zipper in my last pair of shorts. Weird. And the reason for that was that I was supposed to have added the waistband and then sew on the zipper. I am going to work through this little issue, and I think the end result turned out pretty cute, but I wanted to point it out just in case you're also making these. Once I had my zipper in, I stitched the rest of the side seam closed and moved on. Sorry for the lighting in this section, but I did film this bit at night and I was trying to get the best possible lighting in that situation, so I had to constantly adjust the camera. Anyway, then I trimmed the zipper down, leaving about 5 centimeters or 2 inches left, and then I trimmed a bit more of the zipper teeth, but leaving the tape so it would look like this. After I had heat sealed it, I folded each of those tips over the zipper, so when they were both folded, it looked like the zipper ended in a triangle. I stitched the little triangle in place, and then this is what it looked like when I was done. Next, I pinned one of the waistbands to the shorts along the longer edge, matching the side seam. I stitched that in place, and I had realized my mistake at this point, but I was firmly thinking that I was just going to keep going and that an answer would reveal itself. I also trimmed the seam allowances and pressed them towards the waistband. Then I stitched my tag to the waistband facing. Next, I pinned the facing to the waistband along the top and the sides, making sure to fold up the seam allowance of the bottom so that I could hand sew that later. By this point, I had decided that I was going to add a button and buttonhole or something of that nature to the waistband at the top of the zipper. So I stitched these short edges with as little seam allowance as I could get away with to have some extra fabric. I thought it would still look cute and retro and match the top. Anyway, I stitched that in place and trimmed the excess. Then I flipped it right side out and pressed the whole waistband, including pressing the seam allowance of the bottom edge of the facing up. Then I pinned the folded edge in place to hand sew that the next day. I also evened out the hem and pinned that in place. I did a double fold, and I'm just eyeballing the size, but I actually checked it later and it was really even throughout. I guess that's a skill I've developed as I got better at sewing. I actually got a question about my usage of both pins and quilting clips the other day over on Instagram, and I thought I'd share what I said here as well. So I actually don't think there's a rule. You should definitely use what you like best or what you find more practical. What I find practical depends on the project and the fabric and the seam. Sometimes I find pins easier, sometimes I find clips easier. I honestly don't really overthink it. I find I instinctively reach for what feels best at the moment, which I know doesn't really help you, but it's the truth, I guess. I think I've developed that with experience though, so I think it's important to try different things until you find the thing that works for you. And be open to the fact that the thing that works for you might change over time depending on your project, the fabric, and lots of other factors. So like I always say, there's no rules in sewing, just do what works for you. Anyway, for the top, I decided to just bagline it and call it a day, so I pinned the whole thing closed, leaving a little gap. Hello, good morning. It is the next day. I started the playset project yesterday, and today we are really close to being done, actually. My favorite cup. Got giraffe on it. I love the idea that you're probably thinking, oh, look at Olga drinking her morning coffee. It's chocolate milk. I actually got a surprising amount done yesterday. I didn't think I was gonna get as much done, especially because I had to run so many errands yesterday. All I have left to do on the shorts is I need to hand sew the waistbands. Yes, I could do it on the machine, but I think it looks not as neat. I prefer doing it by hand. I think that gives me a better finish, and I like the result of that better. And then I am going to top stitch all around the waistband at the end, just as a decorative thing, and then I think that will match the top stitching I did on the pocket, so I think that'll look really cute. I'm just realizing now that maybe the shorts are a little see-through, but that's gonna have to be okay with me, because we don't have time to go back and line them. On the shorts I also have to do the hem, but I've already got that, you know, pinned up. I just need to go over it on the machine. I think I'm just gonna top stitch it. So maybe I'll do a button or two on the waistband, or I'm actually gonna leave that to the end when I'm doing the buttons on the top. As for the top, all I need to do is sew in my tag and then basically close the side seams and the bottom seam, flip it right side out, press it, and then I think I'm gonna just top stitch all around to have like a nice crisp edge, and I think it'll also match the top stitching on the shorts, and I think that'll be cute. If you can hear jackhammering, I am sorry, but there's construction on the other side of the road, and they started jackhammering yesterday, and I don't know, man. I'm just gonna add the buttonholes and the buttons, and I'm done. I'm gonna go finish my chocolate milk and then get to work. So like I just said, I went ahead and slip stitched the whole waistband facing in place, and then I top stitched all around the waistband for a cute little finish. And while I was at it, I also stitched the hem in place. Then I stitched my tag to the lining of the bodice while trying to remove as few pins as I could, which was a very prickly experience. I stitched the whole bodice closed, leaving a little gap at the bottom, about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. I trimmed the seam allowances, making sure to clip the corners, and started the super duper fun part of bag lining anything, which is turning it right side out. I used a big blunt knitting needle to turn out the corners, in case you were wondering what I used for that. I then pressed the whole top and top stitched the whole thing all around to close the gap, make sure everything stays in place, and also match the same look as the shorts. I then picked out my 3 favorite options for buttons. I posted a poll on Instagram to help me choose. You have the link to all of my socials in the description. I post a lot on there, so it's a good place to keep up to date with me. Anyway, the mother of pearl won, and those were my favorites, so I was quite happy. Plus, I had 2 smaller ones that were perfect to add to the shorts. I made the buttonholes and attached all of the buttons, and I thought that was it, but I was wrong. I tried it on and it was too big, so I had to move the buttons in to make the fit a little bit better. So here I am on holiday, unpicking my buttons and sewing them back on in the new place. And of course, Zeus is on holiday with me. He was very curious as to why the camera was so close to his designated napping spot. And now I was finally ready for an admittedly very Zeus heavy reveal. Enjoy!